Elon Musk. I'm shocked. SpaceX changed the design of Starship Super Heavy. You rarely see a man of Elon Musk's caliber being shocked by any technological advancement. However, in regard to the new design of the Starship Super Heavy, Musk was indeed astounded by its change. Such was the level of transformation of the spacecraft. Today we'll be looking at the design change SpaceX underwent on its Starship Super Heavy. The Starship Super Heavy is amongst the most important crafts for SpaceX. What change did it undergo? How important is this change in the spacecraft's development? Well, stick around till the end as we answer these interesting questions and more as we delve into the details surrounding the company and its eccentric owner. SpaceX has a long history of change and innovation. It started off slow, with many people dismissing it as a company with a lot of innovative ideas but no execution. However, slowly as it matured to become one of the leading, if not the leading aeronautical companies, it did that by undergoing some changes both at the design level and the structural level. And the fact that this change shocked the mastermind behind the whole project, Elon Musk, clearly shows that it is indeed a revolutionary change. Now let us discuss the spacecraft in question, the Starship Super Heavy. We started with Super Heavy because, while it is a less complex model than Starship in some ways, it is just as demanding and novel in others. Let's start with the definition of the Starship Super Heavy. A single Super Heavy booster is basically a long steel tube with a diameter of 9 meters and a length of 69 meters from tip to tail. It should have at least 6 or 7 times the propellant capacity of Falcon 9 and 2 to 3 times the capacity of Falcon Heavy. Unlike the Super Heavy B4, SpaceX's latest Super Heavy prototype can carry 33 Raptor V2 engines instead of the 29 Raptor V1 engines. While the V2 design streamlines the Raptor's design to make it easier to build, install, and operate, it also gives us a 40% gain in maximum thrust. Regardless, Elon Musk, SpaceX's eccentric billionaire CEO, altered the launcher's construction to achieve the aforementioned goals. But how do you do it? How can these goals be reached and Musk's ambitions become a reality? Due to outside conduits and smaller plumbing protection, a revolutionary architecture of the pressure containers, hydraulic power units, and an umbilical pane located on its rear are all visible at first glance. Apart from their thrust constructions, large steel pucks have been modified to support the new Raptor V2 engines, which had previously been installed and tested on all Starship and Super Heavy prototypes. Instead of the customary 3 1.82 meter tall steel rings, its sleeve was made up of 4 1.4 meter tall steel rings. This is the first time on Starbase equipment that shorter rings have appeared. Aside from Raptor engines, the Super Heavy's 2 most significant modifications are undoubtedly aero coverings and the insertion of massive internal header tanks for landing propellant storage. It'll fit over the top of 2 new pairs of 5 composite overwrap pressure vessels or sealed replicas that run approximately a third of the way up to the booster 7's tanks, especially on the current prototype of a new set of sharp aero edge covers. It's probable that, like impacts, they'll mend wing-like structures to improve aerodynamic stability. A Super Heavy B4, on the other hand, has 4 sets of 2 copies evenly distributed around the perimeter of the engine area. Finally, the Super Heavy booster appears to have a full complement of internal header tanks, allowing it to store all of the landing propellants separately. This reduces the amount of pressurization gas required and makes it significantly easier to maintain a consistent supply of propellant for the Super Heavy Raptor engines during complex space and atmospheric maneuvers. The header tank should reduce the risk of liquid propellant being accidentally leaked when the booster is in microgravity, thanks to SpaceX's choice to transform Super Heavy tank vents into maneuvering thrusters. The new Super Heavy will undoubtedly be a game changer with these modifications. The upgrades, on the other hand, will make the spouse even more impressed. To begin, SpaceX increased the height of the Starship's nose barrels from 4 to 5 rings. Because the extra 5.5 meters of mass necessary to lengthen Starship is likely minor, SpaceX will stretch all Starship versions instead. Stretch tanks and more propellant storage could significantly increase the amount of payload that can be sent to the Moon, Mars, and other high-energy destinations for variants like the NASA HLS Moonlander and future Mars-bound Starships, which rely entirely on refueling to reach their destinations. Then with Starship, SpaceX improved its welding technology, resulting in a rocket that is both more robust and beautiful. Since SpaceX began producing the first prototypes in mid-2020, the Starship nose design has been extremely consistent, with the exception of Starship Mk1, which never had its far flimsier nose completely attached. So, are you guys enjoying the video? Here comes another challenge. What will happen to the prototypes? What are the methods being used to design the Starship? What is Elon Musk's vision and how realistic is it? Well, before we answer that, do leave a like if you're enjoying the video, and consider subscribing so that you could receive the latest content from our channel. As SpaceX finalized the nose design and assembly procedure for Starship SN8, the first prototype with its basic structure completed, early prototypes had to be destroyed. To be honest, despite the fact that modifications and alterations were almost undoubtedly performed in recent months, the early unflown prototypes and noses of Starship rockets were all manufactured in essentially the same method. SpaceX would start by stamping a succession of thin metal sheets. Each of them would be welded together to form a slightly conical ring after being positioned on custom-built jigs. Each successive ring would be narrower and more conical than the previous one. The 5 components would be piled up and fused together around their circumferences one by one. The most basic structure of a nose would require 120 intricate vertical wells, followed by 4 or 5 equally complex circumferential wells to unite the pieces into one cone. SpaceX's updated design aims to make the process easier by increasing the size of the gores. Apart from decreasing the number of longitudinal sections required to construct the cone by a ratio of 2 or 3, SpaceX has also reduced the number of stack sections required by a factor of 2 or 3, resulting in a reduction in the total number of gores by at least 2 or 3. The length of vertical and circumferential wells required to assemble a nose cone has been lowered, but is still significant. SpaceX appears to have decided to increase the size of the dome gores while lowering the number of stack sections needed for dome assembly, likely doubling down on the stretch-forming manufacturing method utilized for nose cone gores. Starship Plus 24 was just fully stacked last weekend, despite being the first ship to use the new design. It's evident that a Starlink satellite dispenser is included in a portion of SpaceX's future Starship prototype. The nose barrel that the putative Starlink dispenser is part of has been installed with heat shield standoffs, ceramic wool insulation, and netting, in addition to the first completely outfitted prototype with an enhanced Starship nose cone design. To put it another way, the first orbital flight gear is very likely to have this Starlink dispenser. This suggests that Starlink satellites might be launched from Starship using this dispenser. One should always instill a creative mindset in not only him or herself, but also in the people around him or her. This will not only make you more creative, but it'll also help your team to work better too, and help you get closer to your dream. The same is happening with Elon Musk and his employees over at SpaceX. He has instilled such a mindset, which has led them to undergoing such a change to their spacecraft. We should all learn from that and try to implement that in our lives. Nothing is out of reach in orbit thanks to SpaceX's skilled engineers. Under the leadership of Elon Musk, the company is set for greatness. People will remember him for decades as the man who made it feasible to live on Mars. So, what do you think of the changes SpaceX has implemented in the new design of the Starship Super Heavy? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to watch more of our amazing videos, then stay tuned.